The breaking point. The drop shuttle shuddered violently as it breached Outpost Helios's atmosphere, rattling Finn Mercer's teeth and doing nothing to calm his already frayed nerves. Through the viewport, the barren landscape of the training moon looked exactly as unwelcoming as the stories had promised. Jagged rock formations shrouded in toxic mist, patches of unstable terrain, and not a single hospitable feature in sight. "First time on Helios?" asked the cadet beside him, a lanky Vesperan with translucent skin that pulsed with bioluminescent patterns. "I'm Tazek, by the way." "That obvious?" Finn managed a weak smile. "They say this is where careers go to die." Tazek's skin flashed a pattern that Finn recognized as their version of nervous laughter. "Or where legends are born. Depends on how you handle Commander Zarova." The name hung in the air like a curse. Everyone in the Galactic Defense Force knew about Commander Nick Zarova, the Silurian war hero whose training methods were as infamous as they were effective. Half the recruits she trained went on to become elite operatives, the other half washed out, some with permanent psychological scars. "I heard she once made a Chronon warrior weep," whispered another recruit across the aisle. "And those things don't even have tear ducts." The shuttle landed with a bone-jarring thud. When the doors hissed open, they were greeted not by the expected welcoming committee but by a wall of acrid air and silence. Standing alone on the landing pad was a figure that even at a distance commanded absolute attention. Commander Nix Zarova stood perfectly still, her scaled skin reflecting the dim light in iridescent patterns of blue and green. At 7 feet tall, she towered over even the tallest human recruits. Her posture was impeccable, her forearms clasped behind her back and her vertical pupils narrowed to slits as she watched them disembark. "Formation. Now," she said, her voice surprisingly soft, yet carrying across the pad with unnerving clarity. Finn scrambled with the others to form a line, acutely aware of how unprofessional they must look. He straightened his spine, fixed his eyes forward, and tried to control his breathing as Commander Zarova prowled before them. She stopped directly in front of Finn, her head tilted, scales shifting with the movement. "Name and specialization," she demanded. "Recruit Finn Mercer, Tactical Adaptation and Emergency Response Commander." Her multifaceted eyes studied him with unsettling intensity. "Human, fragile bones, inefficient respiratory system, limited sensory perception." She leaned closer. "Why are you here, Recruit Mercer?" Finn swallowed hard. "To serve, Commander." "Wrong." The word snapped like a whip. "You're here because every other training facility in the quadrant has failed to break you of your species' greatest flaw. The delusion that improvisation is an acceptable substitute for discipline." She continued down the line, dismantling each recruit with surgical precision, cataloging physiological weaknesses and psychological pressure points. By the time she finished, the confident group that had boarded the shuttle had been replaced by a collection of doubt-filled shells. "Your training begins now," she announced. 3 laps around the perimeter, full gear. The atmospheric filters in your suits will function at half capacity to simulate combat conditions. Anyone who falls behind answers to me personally." The perimeter, Finn soon discovered, was 12 kilometers of punishing terrain. By the second lap, his lungs burned and his muscles screamed in protest. The reduced oxygen made every step an exercise in determination. Through his visor, he could see several recruits had already fallen behind. When he finally staggered back to the assembly point, legs trembling and vision blurring, Commander Zarova was waiting, looking as fresh as if she'd been standing there the entire time. 27 minutes, 14 seconds, she said, her eyes fixed on Finn. "Barely acceptable for a Terran. Perhaps your file exaggerated your capabilities." "No, Commander," Finn wheezed, fighting to stand upright. "Then prove it. Combat simulation. You and me. Now." The training ring was a circular platform suspended over a pit of viscous, non-lethal but extremely unpleasant chemical soup. Finn faced the commander, his training staff feeling woefully inadequate against her four-armed prowess. "In real combat," she said, circling him with predatory grace, "your enemy will not wait for you to be ready. They will not care if you are tired. They will exploit every weakness. She moved faster than seemed possible, her first strike nearly taking Finn's head off. He ducked, more by startled reflex than skill. Her second attack caught him in the ribs, sending him stumbling toward the edge. Pathetic, she hissed. Is this what the acclaimed Earth Force produces now? Slow, predictable, weak. Something sparked in Finn then, not anger, but a clarity born of desperation. He stopped trying to match her technique and instead leaned into what humans did best, adapt. His next dodge wasn't graceful, it was awkward, unbalanced, and completely unpredictable. He stumbled, rolled, and came up in a position that made no tactical sense whatsoever. Commander Zarova paused, momentarily confused by the illogical movement. That split second was all Finn needed. Not to strike, he knew he couldn't overpower her, but to reposition, to create space, to survive another moment. Interesting, she murmured, forearms readjusting her stance. Intentional chaos or fortunate clumsiness? For the next 10 minutes, they danced this strange ballet. Finn never landed a single effective blow, but he remained on the platform, defying expectations with each passing second. His movements grew increasingly erratic, spinning when he should retreat, dropping when he should stand firm. When the Tau simulation timer finally buzzed, Commander Zarova stepped back, her expression unreadable. You did not win, she stated flatly. Wasn't trying to, Finn gasped, doubled over and sucking in precious air. Just trying not to lose. Her eyes narrowed. There is no difference in combat. With respect, Commander, Finn wheezed, straightening. Despite the protest from his ribs, sometimes survival is victory enough. For weeks, the pattern continued. Commander Zarova pushed the recruits beyond their breaking points each day, and each night Finn collapsed into his bunk, every muscle, screaming. Yet, while others began to crack under the psychological pressure, Finn's unusual approach seemed to only strengthen with each challenge. The breaking point came during a rescue simulation in the volcanic sector. Their team was tasked with retrieving a downed shuttle crew from an unstable cavern system. Commander Zarova watched from the control center, manipulating environmental conditions to create maximum difficulty. Standard extraction formation, ordered squad leader Vex, a by-the-book Centaurian who had quickly become the commander's favorite. Finn studied the holographic map, noticing something the others had missed. The resonance patterns in the eastern tunnel suggest structural instability. If we go in with standard formation, the vibrations from our equipment could trigger a collapse. The mission parameters specified standard extraction protocols, Vex insisted, mandibles clicking in irritation. Parameters also specify preventing casualties, Finn countered. We need to disperse our weight load and approach from multiple angles with minimal equipment vibration. That's not procedure. The argument escalated until Commander Zarova's voice cut through the comm system. Proceed with standard formation, now. Finn hesitated, then made a decision that he knew might end his career. I can't do that, Commander. Silence fell over the squad. Even across the communication system, Zarova's fury was palpable. What did you say, Recruit Mercer? I said I can't follow that order. The data clearly shows it's going to get people killed. Finn took a deep breath. I'm going to demonstrate an alternative approach. Before anyone could stop him, Finn unhooked his heavy gear, keeping only essential rescue equipment, and charted a path through the narrow tunnel system. Using erratic, seemingly random movements to distribute vibrations more evenly, he advanced, through passages that should have collapsed under standard approach methods. When the first tremor hit, proving his theory correct, the rest of the squad watched in stunned silence as Finn's unorthodox technique kept him safe, while the main tunnel, the one they would have used, collapsed entirely. Against all odds, he reached the survivors, training dummies with vital sign simulators, and established a secure extraction route. As the simulation ended, he stood alone in the command center, facing Commander Zarova's glacial stare. You directly disobeyed orders, she said, her voice dangerously soft. Yes, Commander. You abandoned your squad. To find a safer path for Everyone, yes. She stepped closer, using her height to loom over him intimidatingly. Your actions were reckless, undisciplined, and completely contrary to established protocols. Finn met her gaze without flinching. My actions saved lives. Isn't that what we're ultimately here for? Something flickered in her alien eyes. Not anger, but something more complex. Report to my office at 0600 tomorrow. The rest of you, dismissed. As Finn turned to leave, he caught a glimpse of something unexpected on the commander's face. For just a moment, beneath the rigid discipline and cold authority, there had been a flash of curiosity, perhaps even respect. The tables turn. The corridor outside Commander Zarova's office felt colder than usual as Finn stood waiting at precisely 600. He had spent a restless night preparing arguments to defend his actions, calculating the statistical probability of being discharged, and occasionally wondering if Silurians were capable of physical violence against subordinates. The official handbook said no, but rumor suggested exceptions had been made. When the door finally slid open, he was surprised to find not the sterile, regulation-perfect office he'd expected, but a space filled with artifacts from dozens of worlds, weapons mounted on walls, tactical maps spanning centuries of conflicts, and most surprisingly, a collection of what appeared to be poetry scrolls in various languages. Commander Zarova stood with her back to him, studying a three-dimensional projection of yesterday's simulation. All four of her arms were in motion, manipulating data points and trajectory calculations with practiced precision. Close the door, Mercer, she said without turning. Finn obeyed, then stood at attention, bracing for the reprimand that would end his career. Instead, she turned off the projection and faced him. Your approach to the extraction problem was unorthodox. Yes, Commander. It violated 17 separate protocols. 18, actually. Finn corrected before he could stop himself. Section 5.3 of the Emergency Response Manual also prohibits solo advancement in collapse risk environments. One of her eyebrow ridges lifted slightly. You are either exceptionally brave or exceptionally foolish to correct me right now. Probably both. Commander. For a moment her face remained impassive. Then, to Finn's shock, a sound emerged that he'd never heard before. Commander Nick Zarova's laugh. It was brief and restrained, but unmistakable. Do you know why I was assigned to Outpost Helios, Mercer? She asked, gesturing for him to take a seat. To turn promising recruits into elite operatives, he ventured. No. She settled into her own chair, her posture still impeccable. I was assigned here because my own methods were deemed too unorthodox for Central Command. The irony is not lost on me that I now enforce the very rigidity that I once rebelled against. Finn struggled to hide his surprise. You, Commander? Unorthodox? The Doraxian conflict, 12 years ago. My squadron was trapped behind enemy lines with catastrophic casualties. Her eyes took on a distant look. The protocol demanded we hold position and wait for extraction. Instead, I split our remaining forces, created 6 diversionary targets, and evacuated our wounded through a toxic swamp, using modified atmospheric filters. You broke protocol, Finn said quietly. I saved 57 lives. She refocused on him, and spent the next decade being rehabilitated into proper military thinking, before being assigned here to ensure others don't make my mistakes. The revelation hung between them, reshaping everything Finn thought he knew about the infamous Commander Zarova. So, am I being discharged? He finally asked. No. She stood, pacing the room with languid precision. You're being reassigned. To me, personally. Your training will continue, but with a different focus. I don't understand. The universe is changing, Mercer. The tactics that won the last war will not win the next one. The Galactic Defense Force needs soldiers who can follow orders, yes, but it also needs minds that can adapt when those orders fail. She stopped directly in front of him. I want to study your approach, and perhaps learn from it. The following weeks transformed Finn's experience on Helios. While the other recruits continued their standard training, he divided his time between regular drills and special sessions with Commander Zarova. These private training periods were unlike anything in the official curriculum. "Again," she commanded, circling him in the combat ring. "Show me how you adapted to the Cygnus maneuver yesterday." Finn demonstrated the awkward tumble that had confused his opponent, explaining, "It looks like a mistake, but it's actually calculated. When they expect you to move with maximum efficiency, sometimes the least efficient movement becomes the most effective. Because it appears as weakness when it's actually strategy," she murmured, experimenting with the movement herself. Her version was smoother but retained the unpredictable quality that made it effective. Word spread quickly through the outpost. Recruits whispered about Finn's special status. Some resented it, others were simply bewildered. Tazek was one of the few who approached him directly. "Is it true?" the Vesperin asked during meal period, bioluminescent patterns flickering with curiosity. "She's actually learning from you?" "More of an exchange," Finn replied, uncomfortable with the attention. "She still kicks my ass 90% of the time." "But that other 10%? Tazek pressed. Finn couldn't help but smile. That's when things get interesting. The relationship between student and teacher began to blur. Commander Zarova taught Finn the precision and discipline that had made her legendary, while he showed her how controlled chaos could triumph where rigid order failed. Their sparring sessions became the highlight of his days, challenging, painful, but exhilarating. During one such session, as Finn executed a particularly unorthodox evasion that left her grasping at empty air, she paused the training. "What do you call this technique?" she asked, studying his stance with professional curiosity. "I don't really name them," Finn admitted. "It's more about feeling the moment and responding." "Improvisation is not a technique," she argued, but without her earlier dismissiveness. "Maybe that's why it works," he suggested. "Structure can be predicted. Genuine adaptation can't." Their philosophical debates often continued long after training ended. In her quarters, surrounded by tactical displays and ancient texts, they would discuss the nature of combat, of leadership, of the delicate balance between order and chaos. It was during one such evening that the outpost alert system blared to life. "Unidentified vessel approaching Helios," announced the central AI. "Hostile intent detected. All personnel to battle stations." Commander Zarova was on her feet instantly, her leisure robes swirling as she moved toward the communication panel. "Status report. Raider vessel, Commander. Krivaxian signature. They've already disabled our long-range communications and weapon systems." Finn knew immediately what they were facing. Krivaxian raiders were notorious for targeting training facilities, stealing equipment, taking hostages for ransom, occasionally harvesting rare biological components from unfortunate victims. "Lockdown protocols initiated," continued the AI. "Security teams deployed to critical sectors. They'll have studied our standard defense formations," Zarova said, pulling up the outpost schematics. "And they always target the command center first." Finn examined the display, mind racing. "Which is exactly why you should abandon it." "Abandon the command center?" She stared at him. "That violates every security protocol in the manual." "Exactly." He pointed to alternative areas on the schematic. "Move command operations to the maintenance level. It's the last place they'll look. Then we use their expectations against them." For a tense moment, Commander Zarova studied both, the plan and Finn himself. Then she made a decision that would change everything. "Implement Mercer Protocol," she announced to the stunned security team assembled in the corridor outside. "Evacuate command center. Establish secondary command post in maintenance section C. Rig primary command for remote operation." "Commander," objected the security chief, "regulations clearly state—" "The regulations were not written by someone facing Krivaxian raiders with our systems compromised," she cut him off. "Mercer will coordinate our response." Finn felt a surge of both terror and determination as all eyes turned to him. Commander Zarova nodded once, a gesture that contained unmistakable trust. "What are your orders?" she asked. In that moment, their relationship fundamentally shifted. He was no longer just a student or even a colleague. He was taking the lead. For the next 6 hours, Outpost Helios became the stage for a defense unlike anything in GDF tactical manuals. Using Commander Zarova's disciplined forces in completely unpredictable ways, Finn created an illusion of chaotic disorganization that repeatedly lured the raiders into traps. Teams would appear to retreat in panic, only to circle back and flank the intruders. Defense systems would fail at critical moments, then reactivate when the raiders had committed to a course of action. When the Kravaxian commander finally surrendered, he looked utterly bewildered. "How?" he demanded, as Zarova personally secured his restraints. "Your defenses should have collapsed within the first hour." She glanced at Finn, who stood directing the final security sweeps. "We had a secret weapon." In the aftermath, as GDF reinforcements arrived and began processing the captured raiders, Finn found himself alone with Commander Zarova in the observation dome. The toxic mists of Helios swirled below them, yet somehow seemed less forbidding than before. "Central Command will have questions about our methods," she said, her voice thoughtful rather than concerned. "Will you be in trouble for breaking protocol?" he asked. "Perhaps. Or perhaps they'll finally recognize what I've been trying to tell them for years." She turned to face him fully. "That the strongest defense combines structure with adaptability. That sometimes the most powerful weapon is an unexpected approach." Finn nodded, understanding the deeper meaning behind her words. "The synthesis of both our methods." "Indeed." She extended one of her 4 hands in a formal gesture of respect. "The student has become the teacher, and I find myself in the unexpected position of saying something I never thought I would." "What's that, Commander?" A smile, rare and genuine, transformed her severe features. "Thank you for teaching me, Master Mercer." The title hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Not a surrender, but an acknowledgement, not defeat, but evolution. "Perhaps," she continued, gazing out at the harsh landscape that had forged their unlikely alliance, "it is time for both of us to leave Helios. There are others who could benefit from our combined approach." "A new training program?" Finn asked, intrigued by the possibility. "Something more ambitious. A special response unit designed specifically for situations where standard tactics fail." Her eyes gleamed with renewed purpose. "With your permission, I would like to propose it to Central Command, jointly." As equals, the unspoken addition hung between them. Finn looked out at the hostile moon that had been meant to break him, then back at the formidable commander who had instead helped remake him into something stronger. "I think we have a lot to teach them," he agreed. Commander Nix Zarova, the woman who had once seemed determined to crush his spirit, nodded with respect. "Then let us begin, Master Mercer. The galaxy awaits."